So we'll sit comfortably with our back straight. And spend a few minutes just noticing any tension that we may have in our body and allowing that to release with each exhalation. And so the bare experience of noticing sensations in our body is a non-conceptual consciousness. And if it's non-mistaken, it's a direct perceiver. It's a body consciousness. And if we label it tense or tension, or label it shoulder or neck, it's a conceptual consciousness. So see if we can move our attention to the sensation of the breath at the nostrils and try to keep our attention there. Without getting involved in any thoughts, but putting the primary part of our attention on the sensation of the breath. And once again, that's a non-conceptual consciousness, the awareness, the bare awareness of the breath. It's a body consciousness. And then shift your attention to the sounds in your room, in your home, or outside. Just focusing on the data, the sounds, without labeling them, without interpreting, without judging, but just putting our bare attention on the sounds. This bare awareness of the sound is a non-conceptual consciousness, and it's an ear consciousness. And as long as we're perceiving or hearing something that actually exists, it's a direct perceiver. And then bring your attention to the nose consciousness. So seeing if you can sense any odors. And without straining, just noticing any odors in the room. This is a nose consciousness. It's non-conceptual as long as we're not labeling and thinking. And as long as we're perceiving or smelling something that exists, it's a direct perceiver. And then bringing our awareness to any tastes in our mouth. And just putting our bare awareness on just the tastes without labeling as much as we can. Just sensing, perceiving non-conceptually or directly. Not labeling it a good taste or a bad taste or sour taste, but just perceiving the taste itself without the labels. This is a non-conceptual consciousness. I a tongue consciousness. And as long as it's perceiving something, tasting something that actually exists, it's a direct perceiver. Then imagine that, let's say you have some sort of illness, maybe a fever, or if you have vertigo, or you take some medication, and you start perceiving things that don't actually exist. Perhaps we see the room spinning. Perhaps we hear noises that aren't actually there. These, the perception of sights and sounds and odors and tastes that aren't actually there would be non-conceptual consciousnesses, but they would be mistaken. So they would not be direct perceivers. They would be facsimiles of a direct perceiver. A non-conceptual facsimile of a direct perceiver, because it may seem like a direct perceiver, but it's actually mistaken. So the difference between a non-conceptual, the difference between a direct perceiver and a non-conceptual facsimile of a direct perceiver is that the direct perceiver is non-mistaken, and what is appearing to it actually exists. Whereas the non-conceptual facsimile of a direct perceiver, what's appearing to that does not actually exist. Or we can say what appears to it is erroneous. So a non-conceptual facsimile of a direct perceiver is both a mistaken consciousness, in that there's an erroneous element in what appears, and it's also a wrong consciousness, because its main object, its object of engagement, doesn't exist at all. The sounds that we hear that don't exist, the spinning room doesn't actually exist. Let's bring our attention back to our ear consciousness. So putting our awareness on the sounds around you. So as long as you're focused just on the bare sounds without labeling, and if it's non-mistaken, then it's a direct perceiver. And then if you label that sound, bird or computer or Emily's voice, that's a conceptual consciousness. It's a facsimile. Well, it's a mistaken consciousness because what is appearing to that conceptual consciousness is a mental image of what you're hearing. What's appearing to that conceptual consciousness is an image that you created rather than the sound itself. Where the conceptual consciousness is overlaying the sound with our image of the sound. See if you can notice that. So what's appearing to that conceptual consciousness, labeling the sound, is a mental image. Therefore, that conceptual consciousness is mistaken consciousness. Because a mistaken consciousness is a consciousness in which there's an erroneous element in what is appearing. So what's appearing is a mental image that we mistake for the actual sound. So that conceptual consciousness is a mistaken consciousness. But if we label it correctly, according to convention, then it's a correct conception. And of the various kinds of facsimiles of a direct perceiver, it's a conventional conception. Correct labels are conventional conceptions. Correctly labeling The sound of Emily's voice is a conventional conception that's correct. And think about something you did yesterday. So that thought about yesterday is a conceptual consciousness. What's appearing to that conceptual consciousness is a mental image of what happened yesterday. So it's a mistaken consciousness because it's perceiving a mental image, but it's, and so it's a facsimile of a direct perceiver. It could be factually correct, but it's still a mistaken consciousness because it's perceiving a mental image. Well, not perceiving, it's what is appearing is a mental image. So that thought about yesterday is a conceptual consciousness, and of the facsimiles of a direct perceiver, it's a memory conception. That's what it's called. And bring your mind to a thought of what you want to do later today or tomorrow or later in the week. What you want to do or what you're going to do sometime in the future. Well, actually, let's change that. Something you want to do in the future. Or something we would like to have in that thought is a conceptual consciousness. What's appearing to that thought is a mental image. So it's a facsimile of a direct perceiver and mistaken. And of the various types of facsimiles of a direct perceiver, it is a wishing conception. then bring to mind, see if you can think of a time when you were wrong about something. Perhaps we falsely thought that somebody else did something that they didn't. Maybe somebody else took something of ours and misplaced it, when actually it was us that misplaced it. Or we were wrong about somebody. Or something simple like seeing a coiled rope on the ground and labeling it snake. So that conceptual consciousness, incorrectly labeling snake or incorrectly accusing somebody else, is mistaken consciousness. But not only is it a mistaken consciousness, it's a wrong consciousness. In the example of the snake rope, the main object, labeling snake on a rope, the main object that we're engaging with, which is the snake, doesn't actually exist. So that's a wrong conception. What's appearing to it is a mental image of a snake. And what we're engaging with is a supposed snake, when a snake doesn't exist at all on that rope. So that's a wrong conception. And then its main object doesn't exist at all. So of the various facsimiles of a direct perceiver, it's a wrong conception. And then more subtly, perhaps bring up a time when you thought somebody was inherently annoying. Or we thought that the annoying quality was inherent to that person. It came from the person rather than from our mind. So what's appearing to that consciousness is a mental image of inherently annoying person. So it's a mistaken consciousness. And the object of engagement is an inherently annoying person, which actually does not exist. An inherently annoying person does not exist. And because inherently existent people don't exist. That the label annoying came from our mind. And it's not an intrinsic or inherent quality to the person. So the thought of an inherently annoying person is not only a mistaken conception or mistaken consciousness, it is also a wrong consciousness and a wrong conception of the various facsimiles of a direct perceiver. It seems to be that we're actually perceiving an inherently annoying person, when in fact that inherently annoying person came from our mind and doesn't actually exist. Therefore, it is a wrong consciousness and a wrong conception. And like that, all of our mental afflictions are wrong consciousnesses and wrong conceptions and facsimiles of a direct perceiver. So this fundamental mistake, grasping at anything as being inherently existent, is our fundamental mistake and root of cyclic existence, and the cause of all of our mental afflictions, and the cause of all of our suffering, and the cause of our cyclic existence. And the remedy, the solution, is to realize emptiness. First of all, conceptually, with an inferential cognition. And then eventually to realize emptiness directly with a yogic direct perceiver and a yogic direct valley cognizer.